Okay, that said a few moments ago, of a solid, demonstrable record of shared power that's real and concrete, that can't be misinterpreted.
Join Tavis Smiley and an all-star panel of political insiders, influencers, and journalists for a look back at the crisis that shook LA City Hall when 4 Latino leaders were caught on tape making racist, demeaning, and derogatory statements about black people and other fellow citizens on Monday, October 9th, exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580. The tape. 1 year later. We're broadcast live in afternoon drive from 5 to 7 p.m. with an immediate encore presentation from 7 to 9 p.m. When all was said and done, was more said than done. 1 year later. Are there fractures in LA's black-brown political partnership? And where do we go from here? Don't miss The Tape. 1 year later. Only on KBLA Talk 1580, Monday, October 9th, live from 5 to 7 p.m. with an immediate encore presentation from 7 to 9 p.m. We've got a lot to talk about.
We're having a party, dancing to the music played by the DJ on the radio. The cokes are in the icebox, popcorn's on the table. Me and my baby, we're out here on the floor. So Mr. DJ,
KBLA.
keep those records playing.
Talk 1580. Guess who's here? I don't know what party it is, but we're having a party. He's a national leader for Braver Angels, a former nominee for Congress, former vice chairman of the Republican Party of Los Angeles County, a musical artist, and a noted writer, John Wood Jr. Good morning.
Hey, Dominique.
You actually happen to be one of the only Republicans that I can actually call a friend.
Aw, well, I am honored by that distinction.
Yeah.
Hopefully, there are a few more decent Republicans walking around, but I'm happy to be the one, or one of a couple
Yeah,
for now.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are. I don't know a lot
Still
of
waiting
them.
for 'em,
Yeah,
right?
I mean they're probably out there, but it's great to have you in studio. If you want to see John Wood Jr. and me, go to youtube.com KBLA 1580. So when are you running again, John? When are you back? Are you?
Good Lord, that is the question that keeps.
Yeah, I'm
keeps
sure it
popping-
does.
keeps
I'm sure it
popping
does.
up. Yeah, I don't have any particular plans to hit the campaign trail at the moment, but I'm still young enough, right? I think. So,
Yeah. Well, you're not
pick it
80,
up.
so yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. You got a long time in politics.
Yeah,
you could go till you about in the grave, apparently.
Yeah,
if
apparently.
you-
Yeah. For both parties, apparently.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
right?
you can
We
be-
can't come up with nobody under 80 to lead this country. it seems like.
No, well, there you go. An opportunity is wide open. Braver Angels, the organization that you are national spokesperson for, says that its mission is to depolarize the country. And, in what my ongoing conversation, I kind of feel like bipartisanship is a mirage, at least in this century. But you obviously don't think so because you've kind of dedicated your life to it in a way.
Well, there are a couple of things to be said. One, I mean, bipartisanship is something of a mirage in this century, but that's kind of more the reason why we need a space like that, not so much why we don't. I mean, if you look at polls, you go back in time, there was a period in American history where if you asked people, do you care if your son or daughter marries a Republican or Democrat, you had something like 5% of folks who cared about that in a negative way. The problems, if you go back mid-century, were like, just don't let my kid marry out of their race or marry out of their religion, marry Protestant if they're Catholic or vice versa. Nowadays, that is largely flipped. You got close to half of people who just, couldn't stomach the idea of, marriage across parties or whatnot. But, it's a problem on a basic level. I mean, on the one hand, of course, government, as much as some folks in politics, want to take a somewhat different approach, compromise is necessary towards a functioning government. If you're going to have a society representing diverse people, that's just a part of it. And yet, you don't really have a culture in place for those kinds of constructive compromises to come about. But even more fundamental and more to the concern of Braver Angels, we have an actual concern about communities, about families, about people just living ordinary lives, being able to have relationships with their in-laws, with their grandparents, with their siblings, with their parents, right? And so the problem of polarization in America goes much farther than a divided Congress. Divided Congress wouldn't really be so bad if the American people were working together and living together in the way that they could. But I think that our differences are exploited in a million different ways, and that's what we're trying to push against.
Yeah, those are great points. It goes beyond just the partisan divide, though, right? I mean, at this point, you've got QAnon and all these other misinformation factors, the divide around the shot, the jab, all of this stuff that sort of is connected to partisan politics, but divides families and friend groups and workplaces.
That's right. Every place you could imagine. So at Braver Angels, we have Braver Angels is an interesting thing because on the one hand, we are a community, right? So it's tens of thousands of folks across America, thousands of volunteers who come together, and we sort of have a suite of experiences, workshops, courses, debates, but opportunities to actually engage folks who think differently than you and build up relationships. But people take the habits and the skills that they learn in those workshops and those relationships, and they bring them with them back to their state and local government, back to their corporation, back to their college campus, back to their local community and their kitchen table, right? And so polarization, the way it works in America is, every level of society in one way or another is sort of getting polarized, radicalized, what have you. And there's a way in which misinformation spews up contempt. People organize around contempt. They send elected officials who are trafficking in misinformation, demagoguery to government. They don't have an incentive to govern. Government doesn't respond to the concerns of the people. People lose confidence in their institutions. Rinse, wash, and repeat. We're trying to put in place sort of a virtuous cycle to counter the vicious cycle. And so that's one way in which you can understand the work of Braver Angels.
Can we get those workshops over to the House of Representatives? Can we do that?
Yeah, well, actually, that is something that we are doing. There are a couple of committees in Congress that we work with. One is the Select Committee for the Modernization of Congress. Representative Dean Phillips from Minnesota, Democrat. He's been a very excellent partner for us. The Problem Solvers Caucus. The issue is just that I think the members of Congress who are working with us are the folks who are already somewhat, moderate and predisposed towards this sort of activity to begin with. So it's good that we've got them, but, getting the folks, a little bit further out is, as you can imagine, a bit more challenging. But yeah, working on Congress.
Yeah.
slow, bit by bit.
Yeah, but apparently if we don't get that work done by the end of the week, we got some real serious problems.
I don't think we're going to be in time for that. Government shut down, but it's just kind of like we play these games of chicken with the government.
I hate it.
Over and over and over again.
Can you explain to me, John Wood Jr., why I guess we'll call it, the far conservative wing of your party. Conservative doesn't even sound like the right word, given who I'm talking about, the so-called Freedom Caucus, the people I call the coup caucus. Why is it that they always say they hate government, they want to shut down government, but yet they seek jobs in government? If you hate it, leave it alone and let the people that like it and know how to do it run it.
Right. Well, I think that you've got folks who think that the best thing to do in government is to keep government from becoming big enough to tell you what to do, right? And so that tends to be the language that folks campaign on. That tends to be the attitude they bring into it. And, I'm somebody who is, critical of a state that grows larger than it needs to. There's this old cliche saying that the bureaucracy needs to expand to meet the expanding needs of the expanding bureaucracy. There's a way in which government can be like that, right? But you want to be situational and contextual, and even if you have, I think, a healthy skepticism of government, that doesn't mean that everything government does is bad, corrupt, or unnecessary. And I think that part of the issue is that, to just get back to the phenomenon of polarization here for a second, if government can do no right, then you can do no wrong by hampering government at every turn.
Right. Except where you don't want to hamper it, i.e. the ginormous military budget that we have right now. No one seems, I don't hear anyone on the, on the conservative caucuses whining and complaining about that.
Well, in fairness, a lot of those folks are whining and complaining about Ukraine.
Right, but that's not part of the regular military appropriation. That's a little side adventure that we have going on to the tune of $183 million. And I kind of, it makes my hair stand on end that this is one issue where I somewhat agree with Republicans. I mean, I say somewhat because I do feel like we need to stand with Ukraine in protecting their sovereignty, but a blank check, not so much.
Right, yeah. There's been a little bit of a horseshoe effect where activists on the left and the right are, somewhat meeting on the subject of Ukraine. And that was also true even some years ago with Iraq and Afghanistan. Not most Republicans, but Republicans like Rand Paul and his father Ron Paul, the libertarian wing of the Republican Party, has been trying to divest from America's foreign policy adventurism for a long time. So you've got some diversity there. But but the ideological landscape is shifting a lot in the Republican Party in different ways. Donald Trump helped bring along a populism, that in many respects I think looks a little bit different from
a
that
fake
traditional
populism. If we're being,
conservatism.
how are you a populist billionaire? That just
blue collar billionaire. That's
blue collar billionaire who's never had an actual job. Okay,
but
we're talking with John Wood Jr. You're welcome into the conversation, and you can't come around here these days as a Republican black man and not talk reparations. We got to look at that when we come forward.
Okay.
KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, in downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
I'm MC Light for Hip Hop Heritage, celebrating 50 years of hip hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. From its earliest days of show-stopping, DJs and MCs cold rocking parties, to its dominance on the music charts, hip-hop has been the biggest game changer in American music, and I mean ever. And it's not just about the music. It's how we celebrate, how we communicate, how we continue to elevate. Check out Cadillac and see how our swag has evolved and continues to revolve around the world.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
She's so smooth, so...
I'm interrupting my own shower to remind you to treat your skin like the queen she is with Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash, packed with Olay's highest level of vitamin B3 complex. It's so moisturizing that it will give you visibly smoother, head-turning skin in just 14 days. People wondering, how'd she get so smooth? Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. Also, try Olay Hyaluronic Body Lotion.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
My Republican friend John Wood Jr. is here. Apparently, I'm not his only friend or colleague, at least, who is a Democrat, a progressive Democrat. I think you're the.
But you're at the top of the list, though, Dominic.
Thank you. I think you're the only Republican, or at least admitted Republican, I should say, who's on our airwaves here at KBLA.
Yeah, I don't mind being the token. That's
Yeah,
cool.
the token, the GOP token.
That's all right.
Well,
all right.
and so you're on 9 o'clock.
Yeah, the Reconstruction Project, 9 a.m. every Sunday morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. For folks who want to tune in, if you didn't make it to church, you can always turn on the radio.
Or you can turn it on your way to
airwaves.
church.
That's right.
So,
right.
Yeah, speaking of the Reconstruction Project, where are you on reparations?
Well, I've always, I've long been sympathetic to the essential moral claim of reparations, a great massive human wrong, right, asserted itself in American history at the very beginning of our national experiment. Actually, before that, obviously, because slavery was a colonial phenomenon. And, while there were obviously endless factors following the abolition of slavery that also have significant bearing on the current sort of, circumstances of Black America, slavery is the starting injustice. And so, morally, I've always been sympathetic. And, in an ideal world, if you could establish sort of a broad-based consensus around an approach to reparations that could make sure that the right people were being compensated in a way that was profitable and sustainable politically and economically, then I would be all for it. I think that my problems with reparations as a sort of political priority have more to do with the practicality of it, politically speaking, and otherwise. And so, while it is the case that in the Democratic Party, at least in elections past, you had, folks at least sort of paying lip service to the idea of reparations as something that should be happened. You've never gotten to a point in terms of polling on the subject of reparations that I'm aware of, where you could clearly identify sort of, not just a clear majority in the Democratic Party, but enough independents and Republicans ready to move the right elected officials in Congress across the country in a way that would give you a clear glide path towards getting that bill across. And what happens is when you put a lot of energy into a piece of legislation that doesn't really have the prospects for passage, all other sorts of priorities that might have an impact in the near term wind up going by the wayside. You wind up spending your political capital on something that doesn't quite get across, and in the meantime, missing other opportunities that might be there to address some of the same issues, at least in terms of.
But why isn't it a both and? I mean, why do we have to say, oh, well, there's not a clear path? And most
I'm not telling people not to work on reparations at all. I'm not discouraging you from that. Go forth, make the case. I think what I would say to people is that, as with other issues, and this may be a dispositional bias on my part, but I always believe in calling people in and so forth. And so, because the cause of reparations has to win the support of people who are obviously outside of the Black community and so forth. Well, because Black people don't represent a majority of the voters.
I understand that, but I mean,
if
as some of these activists are saying, this is a deal that America made. Why should it be a popularity contest? I was really irritated with the Los Angeles Times. Their headline: "New poll finds California voters resoundingly oppose cash reparations for slavery."
Even in California.
But that's part of that. With evens, California's Jekyll Hyde. It's like a,
but I'm just saying,
inside
if you
out
can't
red
make it work
state,
in California,
blue on the outside, red on the inside.
Well,
but if it's a deal that was made by our government and was never made good on, why does it matter if you don't like it?
Because this is reality, I think. Look, this is why I say, in an ideal world, it wouldn't be such an issue. It's just that you have to deal with politics and the surrounding landscape of opinions as they stand in any given period of time. So I think it becomes important to sort of call people into that conversation.
Right.
I think that
but if we sit
reparations
here
on
and
the
say,
one
oh,
hand-
it's too expensive, oh, there's not enough support, da 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 da, does that call people in, or does it say, oh, you're safe to oppose it because you don't want to pay money? I mean, they could have spun this. They could have spun this headline a number of different ways. Instead of saying the majority of Californians believe that black people are still suffering the harms of slavery, that'd be a great headline. They didn't say that, but the poll does show that
Right.
the majority of Californians agree with doing something about it, even if they don't want to pay cash, which I think is very interesting. Don't give them black folks no money.
Well, I think that
What is that?
I think that there are two major points in favor of reparations that, if I were leading a reparations campaign, I would probably lead into, which is that on the one hand, of course, there's this great sort of, moral travesty in American history that need be addressed as just along the same lines as we put forward reparations for the Japanese in the aftermath of the internment camps in World War II.
After they fought hard for it, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Now, obviously,
they changed public opinion, which is what we're in the process of doing.
Yes, and in some sense, that was a similar issue because a simpler issue because you had a smaller group of people dealing with something that had just recently happened,
and
to
it
them.
was finite.
So, exactly. And so with black people, you're talking multi-generational and a much larger population.
Because you've dogged us out on such a bigger scale, that means it's harder to get repair, which is crazy.
Well, that's right. I mean, even on a practical level of identifying who truly is a descendant X, Y, and Z, and so it does get more complicated. But the larger thing I would simply say is that on the one hand there's the moral issue, and then on the other hand there's this very real practical issue whereby Black America, beginning with slavery and as a consequence of generation after generation of exploitation, oppression, and disenfranchisement, finds itself across material categories being at the bottom of social statistics for reasons that, as much as we can have sort of intercultural conversations and so forth, are not a sheer reflection of black people's willingness to work hard. There actually are systemic reinforcements that stratify us in ways that make social mobility and full sort of participation in the American project much more difficult for us as a group than it is for other Americans. And so reparations ought to be an investment in rectifying that. And I would say that conceptually, at least, it can include funds from the government, but it can also bring in private business. It can also bring in philanthropy. You could have a cross-sector approach to repairing the damage done beginning with slavery in a way that hopefully, makes this a national project that people can feel good about, right? And something that people can come to realize is an investment in their own country, and whether they're black or white or otherwise, their own families as well, because if you've got a group of Americans who are underserved, it necessarily detracts from the larger economic and social vitality of the American project here, and in terms of how people look at us around the world.
That sounded like a great argument for reparation, John Wood Jr. Let's go to Morris calling us from Inglewood. Hi, Morris. You're on with John Wood Jr. and Dominique. Happy
Good morning.
Talking Point
Hey,
Tuesday.
Dominique.
Yes.
But Dominique, don't you get your blood pressure up too high. I want to ask you, brother, if Donald Trump was running for president, would this black man vote for Donald Trump for the presidency? I'll hold on to hear his answer.
Yeah, that's an easy question for me. The answer is no. Look, I think Donald Trump, I guess there's a couple things to be said about him. I mean, on the one hand, it's easy to identify him as sort of uniquely damaging and just sort of like flagrantly disrespectful of the norms of our political discourse. And even before you get to the level of corruption and lies and deceit, this, that, or the other, it's easy to identify him that way. On the other hand, it's important, I think, to emphasize that Trump is himself something of a symptom, as much as he is a cause of any of the maladies of our politics, Donald Trump, he came along and he spoke to millions of Americans, particularly, rural, southern, poor, white folks who themselves felt disenfranchised and ostracized from the sort of mainstream American culture, mainstream American politics. These are people who don't like, obviously they don't like university liberals. They don't like, Hollywood actors. They've got deep misgivings on, immigration and all these things. But they also didn't care very much for Mitt Romney. They didn't care very much for John McCain. They didn't care very much for the moneyed Republican establishment. The reason I mention that is simply to say that I do believe there's value in understanding sort of the plight of poor white people, even as we talk about reparations.
Absolutely, you have to have a class analysis, but
yes, exactly.
but they don't because Donald Trump reminds me of George W. Bush in that way. He's a rich elite who manages to effectively pose as an everyman. I mean, George W. Bush was very wealthy. And was not from Texas, but people thought he was a great guy to have a beer with, and he wore cowboy boots. And that to me is fake populism. It's the same with Donald Trump. He's an elite. There's no other. There's no other way to slice it. He is an elite. Just because he only has 5 words in his vocabulary doesn't mean he's not an elite.
But I would say that in the absence of the sort of leadership that is genuinely reaching out to those communities, you make them available, as you would with any other community, to exploitation through demagoguery.
Yeah,
right? And so I think that Donald Trump is a prime example of that. I always remind people that Martin Luther King Jr. died in the Poor People's Campaign trying to bring together poor black people and poor white people. The very same, groups of folks.
Right, jobs and justice.
Exactly. The very same groups of folks who are pitted against each other through exploitative forces now, And so that's a bridge that we need to cross to Trump's people, I would argue, even if Trump himself
I agree with that.
I
agree with that. But when we got a minute till news, traffic, and sports. Just to follow up on Morris's question, who are you supporting right now for a Republican candidate for president in 2024?
Well, I don't really have a person exactly. I mean, I would like to see Tim Scott demonstrate some unique value proposition because I think he's a dignified individual. I appreciate his base level sort of personality, but I don't know how sharp he is in the toolbox of policy or speaking to real people's concerns. Vivek Ramaswamy is extremely talented. I love his presentation. The dude really has.
He's trying so hard to be Trump.
He has chops, but that's the issue. Like he talks about wanting to unite America without speaking to the reasons why we're divided. Right?
He also speaks on black culture and racism in a way. He just needs to STFU.
Well,
Juneteenth is a useless holiday. Shut up.
I would love
it's not for you.
I would love to talk to Vivek.
I'll tune into that conversation.
I would love to get Vivek on KBLA. It would be a great conversation.
And I'll be out there protesting, but I'll be listening. John Wood Jr. is my guest. News, traffic, and sports, and more on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
Good morning, I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In Mississippi, an independent evaluation of the Brookhaven Police Department found it rife with internal problems among the force. The 32-page report compiled by a police practices expert cited numerous issues, including manpower shortages and a lack of officer training. It comes more than a month after a mistrial was declared involving a case where a black FedEx driver was shot at by 2 white men. Costco is recalling 48,000 mattresses due to mold risk. The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission announced the recall after customers reported 541 instances of mold from the NovaForm Comfortable Grand 14-inch and DreamAway 8-inch mattresses sold exclusively at Costco. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
MVP's bonus days are back at Lowe's. Shop Klein Tools and get 5 times the bonus points. Lowe's knows pros. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts. If any. Valid 9/18 through 9/29, subject to change. DeWalt offer valid through 10/11.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. The Rams played Cincinnati tough last night but lost by 3. Rams coach Sean McVay has a lot of work to do with his offense. The Rams made only 1 of 11 third down conversions and didn't score a touchdown until a minute left in the game. Quarterback Matthew Stafford was sacked 6 times and threw 2 interceptions. An arrest warrant has been issued for Chargers cornerback J.C. Jackson. Police in North Attleboro, Massachusetts said Jackson missed a deadline on Friday to pay a $600 speeding ticket and complete a 4-hour class on reckless driving. Jackson got a ticket in 2021 for driving 100 miles an hour when he was with the New England Patriots. If I was Chargers coach Brandon Staley, I would order Jackson to go back to Massachusetts and take care of both of those obligations before he's allowed to play again. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
What's up? I'm Danelle Riley, FAMU alumni and creator of the HBCU Culture Shop. I am so proud of my new partnership with Black Beyond Measure and Target. They help me elevate community pride with my HBCU designs and continue to support Black creators and entrepreneurs with Target HBCU challenges, scholarship programs, and campus collaborations. Let's come together this homecoming season and beyond. Shop my brand and discover other Black-owned products at target.com/blackbeyondmeasure.
Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you earn at the end of your first year, which means... Wait, hold up. Question for the audio engineer.
Go ahead.
Did I read that right? Discover automatically doubles all your cash back?
Yeah, that's what the script says.
So if I get a Discover card right now, I can earn twice the cash back.
Apparently. Wait! Unlimited first-year cash back match, only from Discover. See terms and learn more at discover.com/match.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right. Yeah. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency, all over Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah. Breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. This is your dentist. Do me a favor and feel the front of your teeth. How grimy are they?
Ugh.
It's time for a Crest Pro Health reality checkup. That grime is the buildup of plaque bacteria that can cause cavities in just months. You need to switch to Crest Pro Health. While most toothpaste stop working in minutes, Crest Pro Health's antibacterial fluoride protects for up to 12 hours to stop cavities before they start. So pick some up on the way home. Smile. Crest has you covered.
You know that Big Bargain detergent jug is 80% water, right?
80% water? I thought I was getting a better deal because it's so big.
If you want a better clean, Tide Pods are only 12% water. The rest is pure, concentrated cleaning ingredients.
Ooh, pass me the intercom thingy.
Attention shoppers, if you want a real deal, try Tide Pods.
Don't pay for water, pay for clean. If it's gotta be clean, it's gotta be Tide Pods.
Water content based on the leading bargain liquid detergent.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
John Wood Jr. is with me in the studio. You know, I always, it sounds weird to say, he is now a KBLA host. You can hear him Sundays at 9 on the Reconstruction Project. It sounds weird because you're a Republican and because I think you've been with me. Well, you were on my last show, right?
Yeah.
Front page, and so.
Yeah, I've been part of the extended family for a bit. I've been part of the Dominique DePrima family for even longer.
What?
You know, right? So, you know, not just me, but my mom, my stepdad, all your loyal,
yes, shout
loyal
out to your
listeners
family. Yes,
and my family. You know,
absolutely.
So, At this point, we're starting to go back a little bit.
That's right. But we still can't agree on anything. Well, hardly anything. Even though it sounded like you were edging towards reparations, but also edging toward Vivek Ramaswamy, who to me is like a toxic Trojan horse who's trying to make his name by throwing firebombs at the black community, pseudo-intellectual firebombs.
Well, what I said about Vivek was that I like Vivek's presentation and his energy. I mean, he's like, he's 38 years old. We're about the same age. He is a person of color, obviously. He's very charismatic, very intelligent.
Anti-blackness.
He's completely swagger. Coming from the outside. I don't know if Vivek is anti-black. I just think that
you're not listening closely enough if you don't think Vivek is anti-black.
Well, what I think Vivek is somebody who has, like many folks, sort of an understanding of American life, which simply says that, hey, we're a meritocracy. If you come in here, if you work hard, you'll be able to ascend the ladder of success and nothing will stop you, which is well and good, except that he doesn't, I think, pay attention enough to the implications of the things we were talking about earlier. This larger
i.e. history, i.e.
and
knowing what the heck you're talking about, i.e. keep Juneteenth out your mouth. Mm-hmm. How about that? Can we start there?
Sure.
Yeah, because it's not for you. It's not about you. Mm-hmm. Be quiet and stop it.
Yeah, and like a lot of folks, he just sort of equates that history to sort of a larger kind of like, quote, like woke agenda or whatnot.
Right. So
these two things don't have to have anything at all to do with each other.
Right.
Juneteenth is a legitimate holiday, a legitimate part of our history.
Woke agenda, i.e. learning history of the country that you claim to love so much.
Yeah, I mean, look, I certainly have some sympathies with folks who feel like there's a point at which we can over-racialize in the context of our discourse and so forth. No. I'll give you a point right here. I'm a black person, right? And I've had sort of like people, come up to me in certain moments, like, this is on a positive end, saying things like, John, I really feel bad about the experience that you've had as a black man in America. I was like, well, you don't have to you don't have to put that on me. Like, America's been great to me, right? I grew up middle class. I grew up very much integrated. I'm a black person who has received all sorts of privileges and advantages in his life. What I want for people to understand is, one, there is a diversity to experience in black America, but two, within that, there's this disproportionate reality where even though all black people aren't living the same lives, disproportionately many black people are locked in poverty and violence having to do with the system.
Right. Well, that's why I laughed when you said over-racialized. It's like when Republicans say you're playing the race card. So do I have a mask that I can put on and now I'm white and I don't have to play the race card? Like, what other cards are in my deck? They're all spades.
Yeah, right. No, I just mean that, it is not, race is never the sole variable, right? That determines outcomes
I'll
of
give
life
you
in
that.
America. And I'm putting myself
But
forward
it
as an
also
example
doesn't
of that,
go
right?
away. It's like it's not something you take off and on like a shirt.
I'm looking for balance. I'm looking for people who are willing to sort of see the nuances and so forth in the larger kind of spectrum of reality that we have. Like you said earlier, and you and I do agree on this. We do need a class analysis, right?
Absolutely.
Class doesn't make race irrelevant, but a racial analysis without class also
gives you Clarence Thomas.
Well, it confuses it confuses and lumps a lot of things together that should probably be disentangled. But so if we get to the well, I mean, I was gonna jump back to the subject of reparations very quickly. As a matter of dissent, I would be entitled to reparations, right? If we were actually going to arrive at some compromise approach to reparations, whereby reparations were focused in terms of investment in underserved black communities, and I didn't see a dime of it, I would be okay with that. Right.
But if it wasn't and you got a check, you would be welcome to donate it to the WLCAC.
And that's true. And that's
or
true
a local school.
That's true too. Although some people might put in their pocket.
Sure, and that's their business.
Right. Well, it's true. But my only point is just to say that if you are able to center the class analysis while not disregarding the racial relevance, you at least can begin to train your energies and prioritization on that particular sort of, class of black folks, it was really about 20 or 30 87% of African Americans locked in urban communities across America who've been facing the most severe multi-generational poverty, who are the most severe victims of mass incarceration.
So you're saying we don't have an African American underclass in rural areas?
Absolutely, we do. So that's included.
Clear
too,
that up.
Just in terms of population predominance.
Okay, so that argument, that can be a fair argument for most things. I don't think it's a fair argument for reparation, because with reparations, you are talking about, and we can say, okay, we've had these arguments about what makes this a class of people, because now we'll say, oh, reparations are illegal because affirmative action is now illegal. But it is based on a specific set of circumstances that happened in this country, but it happened to black people. So I don't, are we going to give reparation to poor people? That's not what we're talking about when we talk about reparations for the descendant of enslaved black people or Negroes or freedmen or whatever term you want to use. We know who you were. Right. We know who we were. We know who my great-great-grandma was.
Yeah. Well, this is why I make a distinction between the principled and the practical. And ultimately, you don't necessarily want the practical to undermine your principles. But in principle, we also ought to be practical. And so what I mean by that is...
All right, John Wood Jr.
What I mean by
I'll vote for you, but what the heck did you just say?
What I mean by that is simply this. Again, in an ideal world, you might be able to cut everybody a check who's able to prove some lineal descent from the era of slavery. What might be more palatable, right? What may or may not be more palatable, is some approach that focuses investment on the underserved communities that themselves are most damaged as a consequence of that.
I get all that. I don't understand why it has to be palatable. It is a debt.
But
when I owe debts, I have to pay them. They're never palatable. I hate giving away my money to people that I owe it to.
As Larry Elder would point out, if
my best friend.
If he were
relevant,
if he were here, slavery was obviously legal at the time, which doesn't make it right. But it's just to say that in terms of triggering the debt, that debt is something that we are retrospectively recognizing as a true moral debt,
but it was recognized in the Reconstruction. It was recognized after the Civil War, Special Order 15, et cetera, et cetera. Those are contracts. That's a recognition. It's not, that we're just thinking of it now. The reparation movement has been around since slavery was still an ongoing, supposedly legal institution.
Well, the movement has been around, and you can look at Special Order 15 and sort of specific things which identified certain recipients that were never compensated, and so there's narrow incidents like that you can look to. But in terms of broadly compensating the aggregate mass of black Americans from slavery, the nation never really made a commitment to that. Now, during the era of Reconstruction, there was a commitment.
I don't agree with that. Okay.
I just mean in terms of you guys are owed the financial due for your labors. There was never that. Right. At scale.
Okay, we can agree to disagree on that.
Well, I mean, what you had was, the Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen's Bank, a suite of initiatives that were meant to repair the damage from slavery and to deliver
that were never allowed
slaves.
to do what they were supposed to do.
Right, exactly. So yes, you did have a campaign of repair that never quite got off the ground.
And to me, that's a promise. That is a deal that you reneged on.
Yes. I would go with the spirit of that for sure. But I do. But I'm pointing to sort of, because you're asking the question, why should it be palatable, right? And in the absence of there having been sort of this is to Larry Elder's point, the absence of there having been sort of a clear okay, we passed a bill saying we're going to pay, make good on this, and that never happened, right? The legality of slavery at the time means that it's just not that simple, right? And so it's up to us morally to commit to sort of, restoring the balance.
Well, They fought a war they lost, To the victor goes the spoils. I mean, we're talking with John Wood Jr., and we got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. BenefitsCheckup.org.
A lot of schools talk about training the cybersecurity workforce of the future, but do they really deliver? My Computer Career has been supplying the IT workforce with thousands of skilled, certified pros for 15 years. Train with the experts in support, networking, or cybersecurity, and start your career in months, not years. Upskill even faster. On campus or live online. Qualified students may get financial aid, including the GI Bill. My Computer Career. Accredited, acclaimed, effective. Take the free career evaluation at mycomputercareer.edu.
Today is August 22nd, 2023 for Deutsche Taco Bell Radio. Spot title E8 Rolled Chicken Tacos Dipping Sauces Radio 30. Ad ID TCGRCH33000. Stereo mono compatible mix with Tupac.
What makes Taco Bell's rolled chicken tacos so good? Is it the shredded marinated all-white meat chicken? Well, yeah, obviously. But it's also the 3 amazing dipping sauces to choose from. Spicy ranch, warm nacho cheese sauce, and house-made daily guacamole. Now, if you need a third reason, their white corn tortillas are fried to golden perfection, which everyone knows is the best kind of perfection. Order rolled chicken tacos on the Taco Bell app. Get 1 dip for 2-pack or 2 dips for 4-pack at participating Taco Bell stores for a limited time only while supplies last.
Venture X from Capital One is the travel card for people always asking,
where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station,
and your favorite morning show host.
Let's get back to Dominique DePrima right now.
Oh my, I wish you could hear all the convo, even when that happens during news, traffic, and sports.
Right.
I feel like we haven't even gotten through anywhere near my list because we started talking about reparations, but I think it's an important conversation because it never will be normalized. It never will be palatable, as you put it, if we don't talk about it. And one of the biggest talking points on this Talking Point Tuesday around reparations is people say, why should I, who've never owned a slave, you know, who've never was part of that, why should I have to pay out of my tax dollars? Of course, it's true we don't ask the same question about wars and all the other things. But this is my analogy, John Wood Jr., my Republican friend. If I get a house, I steal a house from your great-great-great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents, and you're living in that house and I want that house back, you're saying to me, well, I never took the house.
Right.
So why should I have to suffer because my great-great-grandparents took a house from you? I never took a house, and I live here now, and it's mine.
Right.
But guess what? You still got to give me back that house. Even if your grandmama or your great-great-grandmama took the house, it's still mine. Just because you've been benefiting for it for several generations doesn't mean it's still not mine.
Yeah, and I think that there's power in that analogy. I mean, fundamentally, that's why I think that even as the topic of reparations is challenging in the national dialogue, that it also doesn't go away because that sheer sort of moral premise that you just articulated.
If Donald
is
Trump or if Vivek Ramaswamy or Nikki Haley signs an ironclad deal saying that they will give reparations to black people, is that a game changer for you? Would you vote for Trump? Well, you're not even saying you're pro-reparation anyway, so.
Well, I mean, first of all, let me just say, the thing that I believe in is that there needs to be a massive investment across sectors in Black America, particularly the most materially disenfranchised parts of Black America. Something that happens potentially through legislation, but that also mobilizes the private sector and the philanthropic sector.
But how? What are you talking about? I mean, you're not saying reparation is the way. You want a class analysis,
reparations
which means
could
testing.
be the way, or at least a part of the way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I'm most deeply concerned with is actually repairing the damage done, right, to Black communities. and putting us on a trajectory of fuller economic and social enfranchisement in the American dream. Because, the thing that I say to audiences, including conservative audiences very consistently, is that we have this larger sort of storyline of an America that basically transcended the problem of racism, with the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965 and the work of Dr. King. But even if you take the most optimistic interpretation of that era in history, one that inspires me greatly, of course, but even if you take that and say, well, this led to all sorts of good things, you still had this vast mass of African Americans for whom life got worse in the aftermath of the civil rights movement in very many ways. Through mass incarceration, through obviously the advent of cocaine and heroin, but in a context where the war on drugs, and in a context where economic opportunities were dwindling, you had the Great Society. But if you take seriously the conservative critique and say, well, this had adverse effects within the community, you absent, the opportunity for economic gain. You put people in jail
affirmative
for generations.
action. I mean,
right?
when I hear you speak this way, I wonder why you're a Republican.
Well, what I'm saying is, you go from slavery all the way up to Rodney King and George Floyd, and for this vast, disproportionate percentage of African Americans, ask yourself the question, where does the American dream ever show up? And so I'm always trying to remind people of the true, and would want to remind someone of Vivek Ramaswamy, just what the true contours of the black experience have been, even while there are millions of other black folks like myself who have, lived great lives and had all sorts of opportunities, the post-civil rights era, and, and we can find many examples before too. You ask why I'm a Republican. Part of what I believe, however, and I think that there's a lot of sociological support to sort of back this up, is that a lot of the most impactful things that we can do to counteract poverty, violence, and recidivism, educational disparities, can take place through direct community investment, through philanthropy, through the work of the private sector, and that there need to be sound policies that exist underneath that, right? And these things can be more or less aimed at sort of actively channeling federal dollars into programs. But my point is just, why ultimately it's probably going to take a cross-sector approach to fix a problem of this scale. And if all of your energies are focused on a piece of legislation, you might not ever get there.
Understood, but there is the Republican talking point I was looking for. Let the private sector and philanthropy do it, even though all of us pay taxes.
I'm saying
and all of our money is going to the military-industrial complex.
I'm saying all of the above, Dominic. I have, I know of course, I've got a long-standing relationship with Bob Woodson of the Woodson Center and so forth, right, which is Bob is, traditionally sort of black conservative, but a bit of an iconoclast, even on the right. But over decades, I mean, he and others have mobilized this amazing network of organizations in mostly poor black communities from here to South Africa, building up economic opportunity, mitigating violence, developing communities. And if you were to chart out, the actual ROI on dollars invested there, it would compare very favorably, I think, to the dollars that come in from public sources into those same communities, right? So that lets you know that we can mobilize communities in a very impactful way.
KBLA host, Republican John Wood Jr. I'll pass him the mic when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580.
A safe place to go loud.
A great place for progressive politics.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
This season, your coffee orders are getting warmer, and your outfits are getting cozier. The world keeps changing, and so does COVID-19. That's why this season's COVID-19 shots have been updated. They're one of the best ways to help protect yourself against COVID-19. You can get a COVID-19 shot at the same visit as a flu shot if you're due for both, as recommended by the CDC. Talk to your healthcare provider to learn more and schedule at vaccines.gov. And don't forget to get extra cinnamon spice. Sponsored by Pfizer and BioNTech.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio, KBLA Talk 1580.
Okay, catch him at 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580. John Wood Jr., what are your socials? Let's get the Braver Angels, I know, your organization.
That's right. Yeah, you can find Braver Angels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, probably other places, at Braver Angels, right? And the website is braverangels.org. And you can also find us on YouTube. There's the Braver Angels podcast, which I sometimes fill in on. And you can find me, John R. Wood Jr. And I'm on Twitter. I'm on the Gram. I think I'm on Facebook, too. You know,
he's everywhere.
I'm all over the place.
I didn't get a chance to ask you, about why Senator Menendez needs to resign, but Clarence Thomas is just all right. I didn't get to ask you much about the shutdown. I mean, we're going to have to do this again, but I want to pass you the mic. What is the point that you want to make before you get out of here today?
Oh, I mean, the thing that I'm always trying to bring to the center of the conversation. I'll say it this way because, here at KBLA and, Brother Tavis, we've got to reintroduce love to the public square. This was the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr.'s work, along with so many other things. But King's core conviction was this idea that love is a spiritual power that can affect social transformation. And I have tried to live my life as much as I can as an echo of that wisdom. And it's why, Dominique, however much you and I might disagree on things, at the end of the day, us two working together, I think, is going to make the world a better place because there is something that transcends politics. It is love, and through love, I think we can more profitably pursue justice and equality as well, And so, I ask people to keep their faith in love, keep their faith in God, keep their faith in agape,
Yeah,
and we're gonna be just fine.
Absolutely, and by love, you don't mean making out at performances of Beetlejuice.
Well, I mean, it could be that too. I guess. I'm not here to kink shame anyone. That's not my get down. So,
that's not your get down. You're not one of those Republicans.
No, I'm not from the prudish wing.
No, I mean, nor am I. I just, to me, it's the hypocrisy.
Yeah,
that's my issue.
Sure.
Do what you do. You boo. It's all good. Do you? Just don't try to shut down my drag queen story hour.
Yeah, exactly. Live and let live. That's also a great American idea. People should get back to that.
Right? Yeah. Well, it looks like the nominee is Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the vice presidential nominee won't be Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't think it'll be Tim Scott unless we can find him a girlfriend.
That was, Tim needs to find a less exaggerated answer to that question I saw.
About the girlfriend?
Well, I just saw him in one interview where somebody compared it to the Tom Cruise jumping on the couch Oprah moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Where Tim Scott was like, I got a girl and praise God, that she's XY. I mean, it's just like, I appreciate it, but, maybe dial it back a little bit. Just be like, I got a lady. She's great.
I was thinking we should have a contest and maybe find him a girlfriend because I think she's fictionary. I think she's an imaginary girlfriend.
You do a sweepstakes, eligible bachelor. Member of he's got benefits, y'all.
You think you could be Tim Scott?
Tim Scott has got benefits.
Call 1-800-920-1580.
There you go.
Well, you have a wife and family, so my best to them, and please tell them thank you for letting us borrow you.
Thank you very much. I will.
On an early morning. And, of course, we can find your podcast and all of that on the Braver Angels
That
website.
is correct, and I'm also the host of a podcast called Uniting America with John Wood Jr. You can find that on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find that on the Braver Angels website as well.
And while you're doing those pods, look for me. Any show you missed is there wherever you get your podcasts and also on the KBLA 1580 app. Free. John Wood Jr., thank you so much.
Thank you, Dominic.
It's time to talk safety. What keeps us safe in the city of L.A. and beyond? I'm Dominique DePrima, looking forward to talking with two of our deputy mayors next hour when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Good morning, I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network.